Hi, I'm back with another civics question that's worth asking. This one's going to be, why does due process matter? And I've been trying to take some time to look at some questions that deal with civics and trying to find some answers, maybe throw out some ideas to discuss. But the important thing to remember is that civics is not just memorizing the three branches of government. It's actually learning how power works and how rights are protected and how decisions get made and what responsibilities come with living in a republic. I'm Matt Hasquin. I'm a high school history, civics, and government teacher at a small public rural school in south central Illinois. And I've been trying to come up with questions that deal with civics and are worthy of being discussed. And so today I want to talk about, why does due process matter? Well, due process is one of those phrases that people hear in government class. They hear in court cases and television shows and on the news. And it sounds rather technical. It can sound like, legalese or legal paperwork. It can sound like something only lawyers really need to understand. But really, due process is a whole lot more than that. Due process is the principle that government cannot take away your life, your liberty, or your property without fair legal procedures. Those three things that Thomas Jefferson said that we all were born with: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That phrase appears in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution and the 14th. In the Fifth Amendment, it limits the federal government. In the 14th Amendment, it applies due process protections to the states, so it blankets the whole thing. And this matters because due process is one of the main ways that the Constitution actually protects individuals from arbitrary government power. So to put that kind of in plain English, due process means government cannot simply punish you just because it wants to. It can't put you in prison because the officials dislike you. It can't take away your property without legal protections. It can't accuse you of and then deny you a meaningful chance to respond. It cannot decide if you're guilty first and then worry about fairness later. Due process matters because power is dangerous when it's not restrained by proper procedures. And in civics, procedure is not just a technicality. Procedure is protection, and a fair process helps people protect people from mistakes and bias and corruption and anger and political pressure and the abuse of power. This is why things like courts and evidence and trials and the right to an attorney, the presumption of innocence, the notice of your charges, the ability to confront your witnesses, an impartial judge or jury, why all these things matter. Because these protections aren't designed because we think every accused person is innocent. They're designed because we know government power must be tested before it can be used to punish anybody. And that distinction is super important because due process means people cannot be held accountable. I'm sorry, I need to say that again. Due process does not mean that people cannot be held accountable. It doesn't mean that criminals will always go free or the government is powerless. It means that government must prove its case and follow the rules before it takes away someone's freedom, their property, or their unalienable rights. A government that can punish without process is not limited government. That's like episode 5. Now, if that's the case, then government is just power with a badge, a title, or the courtroom backing it. Due process also matters because it protects unpopular people. And that's when the rights get tested the most. It's easy to believe in fairness when we like the person who happens to be involved. It's harder when someone is accused of something terrible. It's harder when the public is angry. It's harder when people want quick justice. It's more difficult. It's harder when the person has unpopular beliefs or little money or few connections or no public sympathy. But due process matters precisely because we can't allow rights to depend on popularity. So if the government only has to follow the rules for people we like, then the rules aren't really rules. They're privileges. And privileges can be taken away. Rights are different. They're supposed to limit government even when the situation is emotional or frightening or inconvenient. And American history has shown why this matters. There's been times when government has violated due process in the name of public safety, national security, racial hierarchy, fear, or political pressure. Korematsu v. United States with Japanese internment. That's one that comes right off the top of the head. But people have been denied fair trials, and they've been punished without proper evidence. And people have been detained or excluded or silenced or mistreated because officials decided that normal protections shouldn't apply. And those moments remind us why due process cannot be treated as optional. When fear begins to rise, rights are often the first thing people are tempted to just set aside. But that is exactly when rights matter the most. Due process is also connected to the idea of equal justice. So if wealthy or powerful people get better due process than poor or powerless people, then the system is not living up to its own principles. If one group is more likely to be searched, arrested, charged, convicted, or punished unfairly, then due process is not just a courtroom idea. It becomes a question of whether the law is being applied equally. And that is why due process is not only about criminal trials. It can also matter when government affects property, education, benefits, immigration proceedings, employment, licensing, and other areas where people can lose something important. And so anytime government has the power to take something significant from a person, the question should be, what process is due? What notice should the person receive? What evidence should be required? Who gets to decide? Can the decision be challenged? Is the process fair? Those questions are at the heart of due process. And it reminds us that justice is not only about the final outcome, it's about how the outcome is reached, how justice can reach that outcome. A person may deserve punishment. A law may need to be enforced. A government action may need to be justified. But in a constitutional republic, the government still has to follow the rules. It has to stay in its lane. Because if government can ignore the process when it's convenient, then none of us are truly protected. Due process matters because it slows government down before it uses its most serious powers. It forces officials to prove and explain and justify and follow the law. It protects the innocent from punishment. It protects the guilty from unlawful treatment. It protects the unpopular from mob pressures. And it protects everyone from the idea that government can simply do whatever it wants. So, why does due process matter? Well, because liberty is not protected by good intentions alone. Because government power needs rules. Accusations are not the same thing as proof. Because fairness should not depend on popularity. Because process is one of the main barriers between citizens and arbitrary power. And so the real civic question is not whether government should enforce the law. Of course, the government should enforce the law. The real question is whether government can enforce the law while still being bound by the law. And that's why due process matters. And that, I think, was a civics question that was worth asking. If you've hung around for this time, the Cliff Notes version, why does due process matter? Well, due process means government cannot take away life, liberty, or property without fair legal procedures, without the due process of law. It does not prevent accountability. It requires the government to prove, explain, justify, and follow the rules before using its powers against a person. Thanks for hanging around for this one. It went a little long. I appreciate it again. But yeah, we're getting into some more meaty stuff here on the civics side of things. So thanks for hanging around. I appreciate it.